Nobody saw this coming. Not the political experts, not the media, not even his closest advisors. Donald Trump just pulled off what might be the most shocking political comeback in American history, and what he's doing next is leaving the entire nation stunned. I'm talking about moves so unprecedented that they're rewriting the playbook of American politics. We're witnessing something that hasn't happened in over a century, and the ripple effects are already shaking the foundations of how our government operates. Look, I've been following politics for years, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that what's unfolding right now is unlike anything we've ever seen. The speed, the scale, the sheer audacity of what's happening is catching everyone completely off guard. Even Trump's own supporters are shocked by how fast he's moving. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly what Trump is doing that has America in complete disbelief. I'm going to show you the 3 massive moves that nobody expected, how they're already changing everything, and why political insiders are calling this the most dramatic transformation of American policy in decades. But first, let me give you some context about just how unprecedented this situation really is. Trump didn't just win the election, he absolutely dominated it in a way that defied every prediction, every poll, and every expert analysis. He swept all 7 swing states, won the popular vote, and delivered what many are calling the most decisive electoral victory in modern history. Here's what makes this so shocking. Trump is now the first former president to return to power since Grover Cleveland did it back in 1892. Think about that for a moment. We're talking about something that hasn't happened in over 130 years. Political analysts spent months telling us this kind of comeback was impossible, that Trump's legal troubles would sink his campaign, that voters had moved on. They were wrong, dead wrong. And now, Trump is using this mandate in ways that are absolutely stunning political observers across the spectrum. The transition period alone has broken every record for speed and decisiveness. While most incoming presidents spend months carefully planning their first 100 days, Trump has essentially thrown that playbook out the window. He's moving at a pace that's leaving seasoned Washington veterans scrambling to keep up. We're talking about more executive orders in his first week than most presidents sign in their first month. The machinery of government is being rewired at a speed that's making even his allies nervous. But here's where it gets really interesting. Trump's not just moving fast. He's moving in directions that nobody anticipated. Remember, this is a man who already served 4 years as president. Everyone thought they knew what to expect from a second Trump term. They thought they had him figured out. They couldn't have been more wrong. The first shocking move that's got America reeling involves immigration, but it's not what you think. Yes, everyone expected Trump to crack down on illegal immigration. That was obvious. What nobody expected was the sheer scale and unprecedented nature of what he's actually implementing. We're talking about what Trump himself is calling the largest mass deportation program in American history. Not just the largest in recent memory, the largest ever. Period. The numbers we're seeing are mind-boggling. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has been instructed to meet quotas of 1,200 to 1,500 arrests per day. Let me put that in perspective for you. Under the Biden administration, ICE was averaging about 300 arrests per day in 2024. Trump has essentially quintupled that target overnight. In just the first week, we're seeing daily arrest numbers that are shattering every previous record. But here's what's truly shocking. Trump isn't just using traditional immigration enforcement. He's deploying military resources on a scale that's never been attempted before. We're talking about 15,000 troops being ordered to the southern border. The Department of Defense is being tasked with providing detention capacity, supporting apprehensions, and even helping with border wall construction. This isn't just policy change. This is a complete militarization of immigration enforcement that goes far beyond anything we've seen in modern American history. Trump has assigned the U.S. Northern Command, the joint military command that was set up after 9/11 to combat terrorism, with the mission to, quote-unquote, seal the borders. Think about that for a moment. A military command created to fight terrorists is now being used to handle immigration. That's not just unprecedented, that's a fundamental shift in how America approaches border security, and it gets even more shocking. Trump is invoking laws that haven't been used since World War II. I'm talking about the Alien Enemies Act, the same legislation that was used to force people of Japanese, German, and Italian ancestry into internment camps during the war. Trump is attempting to use this act to immediately deport people without due process. Legal experts are calling this the most controversial use of executive power in decades. We're seeing constitutional lawyers scrambling to understand the implications of what's happening. The speed at which these policies are being implemented is giving courts no time to review their legality. But immigration is just the beginning. Trump's second shocking move involves his cabinet appointments. And this is where things get really interesting. Everyone expected Trump to pick loyalists. What nobody expected was just how controversial and unprecedented these selections would be. We're talking about choices that have stunned even seasoned Republicans in Washington. Trump announced nominees that caught lawmakers completely off guard. Fox News host Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense, former Democrat Tulsi Gabbard, who previously met with Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad, as Director of National Intelligence. And then came the bombshell that nobody saw coming. Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. This is a man who was under investigation by the Justice Department and Congress over allegations involving a sex trafficking scheme. The announcement sent shockwaves through Washington that are still reverberating today. What makes this so unprecedented is that Trump seems to be deliberately choosing the most controversial candidates possible. According to sources briefed by his team, Trump found traditional Republican candidates boring. He was specifically searching for what they're calling firebrands, people who would shake up the establishment. But here's what's really shocking about these appointments. They represent something much bigger than just personnel choices. They signal a complete takeover of the Republican Party by Trump's Make America Great Again movement. The traditional Republican establishment that once held significant influence has been almost entirely pushed aside. Trump isn't just filling positions. He's installing a completely loyal apparatus that will implement his agenda without question. These aren't seasoned Washington insiders who might push back on controversial policies. These are true believers who will execute Trump's vision, no matter how unprecedented or controversial it might be. The third shocking move involves something that virtually nobody predicted. Trump's legal troubles, which were supposed to be his biggest weakness, have suddenly and mysteriously evaporated. Every major criminal case against him has been dropped or indefinitely postponed. Special counsel Jack Smith, who is pursuing 2 major federal cases against Trump, filed court documents stating that the cases must be dismissed because Trump is now president-elect. But here's the kicker. Smith explicitly stated that this decision is not based on the merits or strength of the case against the defendant. In other words, the cases aren't being dropped because Trump is innocent. They're being dropped because he won the election. That's a legal precedent that's sending shockwaves through the justice system. What makes this even more stunning is what Vice President-elect J.D. Vance revealed. He stated that had Trump lost the election, he may very well have spent the rest of his life in prison. Think about that. We just elected a president who, according to his own running mate, was facing potential life imprisonment. The implications of this are staggering. We're living in a reality where winning an election has essentially granted someone immunity from prosecution. Legal scholars are calling this the most dangerous precedent in American judicial history. The message being sent is crystal clear. If you can win the presidency, you can escape accountability for virtually anything. But Smith did something that's keeping legal experts awake at night. He dropped the charges without prejudice, which means they can be brought again in the future. He characterized Trump's presidential immunity as temporary. This creates an unprecedented situation where a sitting president is essentially living under the sword of Damocles, knowing that these charges could return the moment he leaves office. This legal maneuvering has created a constitutional crisis that nobody saw coming. We now have a president who has every incentive to never leave power, because doing so could mean facing the very charges that were dropped. It's a situation that fundamentally alters the balance of power in ways that our founding fathers never anticipated. Now, here's where Trump's moves get even more shocking. While everyone was focused on immigration and legal battles, he quietly launched what can only be described as an economic war against America's closest allies. I'm talking about tariffs so massive and unexpected that they've sent global markets into complete chaos. Trump announced 25% tariffs on all goods from Canada and Mexico. Let me repeat that. 25% tariffs on everything coming from our two largest trading partners and closest neighbors. These aren't targeted tariffs on specific industries. This is a blanket economic assault on the North American economy. What makes this so shocking is that these countries aren't economic rivals. Canada and Mexico are bound to the United States through the USMCA trade agreement, the very deal that Trump himself negotiated during his first term. Legal experts are scratching their heads trying to figure out how Trump plans to implement these tariffs without completely violating his own trade agreement. But it gets worse. Trump also announced an additional 10% tariff on Chinese goods, on top of existing tariffs. We're talking about a simultaneous trade war with the world's second-largest economy and our two closest neighbors. The economic implications are staggering. Within hours of these announcements, we saw something that shocked even seasoned economists. China and Canada immediately responded with their own retaliatory tariffs. What started as Trump's trade policy became a full-blown international economic conflict faster than anyone thought possible. The numbers are mind-boggling. Economic analysts are calculating that these tariffs amount to an average tax increase of nearly $1,300 per American household in 2025 alone. That's not a one-time cost. That's an annual burden that will hit working families directly in their wallets. But here's what's truly unprecedented about Trump's approach. Most presidents implement major policy changes gradually, allowing markets and institutions to adjust. Trump is doing the exact opposite. He's implementing everything simultaneously at maximum speed and maximum intensity. Think about what's happening right now. Massive immigration raids, military deployment to the border, controversial cabinet appointments, international trade wars, and constitutional legal battles are all unfolding at the same time. It's like watching someone try to rebuild the entire federal government while it's still operating. The speed of these changes is creating chaos in ways that even Trump's supporters didn't anticipate. Government agencies are struggling to implement policies that are changing daily. Career civil servants are resigning in record numbers because they can't keep up with the pace of transformation. What's particularly shocking is how Trump is using executive power. Most presidents are cautious about executive orders because they can be easily overturned by the next administration. Trump is issuing them at a rate that's breaking every historical record, seemingly unconcerned about future reversals. In just his first week back in office, Trump signed more executive orders than most presidents sign in their first quarter. We're talking about fundamental changes to immigration policy, trade relationships, military deployment, and federal agency operations, all implemented through presidential decree. The scope of these orders is unprecedented. Trump has canceled temporary legal status for over 1 million immigrants, placing them at immediate risk of deportation. He's ended long-standing policies that prevented immigration enforcement in schools, hospitals, and places of worship. These aren't minor policy adjustments. These are seismic shifts that are affecting millions of lives overnight. But perhaps the most shocking aspect of Trump's return involves something that's flying under the radar while everyone focuses on the big headlines. He's systematically dismantling the entire structure of checks and balances that normally constrain presidential power. Traditional oversight mechanisms are being rendered ineffective by the sheer volume and speed of changes being implemented. Congressional committees can't review policies that are changing daily. Federal judges can't rule on executive orders that are being superseded before cases can even be filed. What we're witnessing is the emergence of something that political scientists are struggling to categorize. It's not quite authoritarianism because the democratic institutions still exist. But it's not traditional democratic governance either, because those institutions are being overwhelmed to the point of ineffectiveness. The most disturbing part is how Trump is using the rhetoric of emergency to justify unprecedented actions. By declaring a national emergency at the border, he's unlocked funding and authorities that bypass normal congressional oversight. This isn't just about immigration policy. It's about fundamentally altering how the federal government operates during declared emergencies. Legal experts are warning that Trump is creating precedents that could be used by future presidents to bypass constitutional constraints in ways we've never seen before. The emergency powers being invoked today could become the normal tools of governance tomorrow. What makes this particularly shocking is how Trump is combining these emergency declarations with military deployment in ways that are testing the boundaries of the Posse Comitatus Act. This law, passed after the Civil War, specifically prohibits the use of military forces for domestic law enforcement. Trump's orders are calling for reviews of military use of force policies and exploring whether to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807. This rarely used statute could potentially allow Trump to deploy soldiers not just against migrants, but against American citizens participating in political protests. The implications are staggering. We could be looking at a situation where peaceful protest becomes subject to military intervention. That's not just unprecedented in modern America. That's the kind of thing we associate with authoritarian regimes, not democratic republics. The financial markets are responding to these developments in ways that nobody anticipated. We're seeing volatility levels that rival major economic crises. But this time, it's not being driven by external shocks or natural disasters. It's being driven entirely by policy uncertainty and the breakneck pace of governmental transformation. Major corporations are scrambling to adjust supply chains that took decades to build. The tariff announcements alone have forced companies to make emergency decisions about sourcing, manufacturing, and distribution that normally would take months of careful planning. We're watching real-time economic disruption unfold as businesses try to navigate a regulatory environment that's changing faster than they can adapt. But here's what's really catching people off guard. Trump isn't just implementing the policies he campaigned on. He's going far beyond what even his most ardent supporters expected. The campaign rhetoric that many dismissed as political posturing is being translated into actual policy at a scale that's shocking even seasoned political operatives. Take the federal workforce restructuring that's happening right now. Trump is implementing what he calls Schedule F, which would essentially eliminate job protections for tens of thousands of federal employees. This isn't just about reducing government size. This is about fundamentally altering the nature of federal employment by making career civil servants subject to political firing. The implications are staggering. We're talking about potentially replacing experienced government professionals with political appointees across every federal agency, Scientists, economists, analysts, and career experts who have served through multiple administrations, regardless of party affiliation, are suddenly finding themselves vulnerable to political purges. What makes this particularly unprecedented is the timing. Most major governmental restructuring happens gradually over years or even decades. Trump is attempting to transform the entire federal bureaucracy in a matter of months. The speed is creating administrative chaos that's affecting everything from Social Security processing to national security operations. International allies are responding with a mixture of shock and strategic recalculation. NATO countries are holding emergency meetings to discuss how to deal with an America that's suddenly implementing isolationist policies at unprecedented speed. Trade partners are exploring alternative arrangements that don't rely on American stability. The diplomatic implications are profound. America's soft power, built over decades of consistent international engagement, is being dismantled in real time. Foreign governments that planned their policies around predictable American behavior are now dealing with a level of unpredictability that's forcing them to fundamentally reassess their strategic relationships. What's particularly shocking is how Trump is handling classified information and intelligence sharing. Reports are emerging that traditional intelligence briefing processes are being dramatically altered. Career intelligence professionals are expressing concerns about how sensitive information is being handled and shared within the new administration. The intelligence community, which typically operates with careful protocols developed over decades, is being forced to adapt to leadership styles and decision-making processes that break from established norms. This isn't just about policy differences. This is about fundamental changes to how America's most sensitive national security information is managed. Perhaps most concerning is how these rapid changes are affecting America's democratic institutions at the state and local level. The federal policies being implemented are creating conflicts with state governments that are unprecedented in modern American federalism. We're seeing legal battles emerging between federal and state authorities that could reshape the balance of power in ways our constitutional system wasn't designed to handle. What we're witnessing right now is nothing short of a complete transformation of American governance happening at lightning speed. Trump's unprecedented comeback has unleashed moves so shocking that they're redefining the very nature of presidential power. From military-backed mass deportations to economic warfare with our closest allies, from the collapse of criminal prosecutions to the systematic dismantling of federal oversight, we're living through changes that will reshape America for generations. The question isn't whether you support or oppose these moves. The question is whether our democratic institutions can survive this level of rapid transformation. History will remember this moment as the time when American politics changed forever.